So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end as per Yeshayahu the prophet. We find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. As we read then Yeshayahu the prophet, we always asked, and we ask precisely, why then Israel has destroyed its own prophets? Why then, after so many warnings and so many understandings, yet Israel could not understand the importance of the plans of heaven? So they were destroyed, they were murdered. So then, as we begin our quest understanding these rejected people, let's make sure when we read the holy instructions and when there is a person explaining the holy instructions, let's make sure we are not similar then as Israel was regarding the destruction of its own prophets. As far as we can read from Daniel the 11th chapter, there is a section of it related with Egypt. Egypt then being a great nation, and Egypt was the most important kingdom of the world many centuries ago. And the holy instructions is given us a few facts regarding this country and the influence thereof regarding then the sons of Ishmael gathering in Egypt and then forming the kingdom of the south. There are a few considerations as far as the kingdom of the south, as we can understand as the kingdom to come government on the land of Cush as per the prophet Yeshayahu's instructions. The second is sections of the 11th chapter of Daniel explains armies southbound versus then Egypt as being a kingdom. So then what enforces what is then the dismembering of Yeshayahu's prophecies per content and context. So then, as if you would then try to find a trail, if you like then going to the forest and camping and so on and so forth, and then you have to find a trail and then find a campsite. So then, as far as Daniel, the 11th chapter, and Yeshayahu, we have the facts, the Hebrew writings, and then the interpretations thereof, but then linked with this financial system of our time, because we are during the time of the restoration period, restoration of the holy cities of the Messiah as per the instructions of the prophet Yeshayahu, chapter 1:8. And he explains as cities, it is plural. Thus then the 61st chapter of Yeshayahu also, and the cities. Revelation, obviously, the translator, when he went and translated tabernacling, it is also plural. The spiritual understanding of tabernacling is singular. The physical locations of the first tabernacle service is then singular. It was then firstly on a desert, then later on went to Israel on Mount Moriah, was then the site of the temple. Thus then singular. When the Messiah came, he became plural. Tabernacling, plural. Many cities from the model it was shown Moses in the desert. So then as you can start listening to these, your mind are organizing by itself. You don't take a lot of time studying, because at least the basic structuring of it, as you hear it, your own mind is going then positioning those layers. Obviously, the study is important because of the many layers involved then with each of these understandings. And then, during our time of the restoration period, there is then the first holy city of our restoration period, because it was during the time of Yohanan, known as John. John then was the first person gathering his people, and mostly of those people he was gathering, those also were the rejected people of Israel. Some of them were not, some of them were enlightened by what the Messiah had said, but most of them rejected. And then the team of Yohanan on the land of Cush, then they gather around, they gather the documents of the time from Shaul, from Paul, from Peter, from Shimon, from a few writings of the other Shilishim or apostles. They gathered those documents, and then they came up with Hebrews. Hebrews are then the updated instructions of the second tabernacle services, thus then tabernacling plural. Then on the land of Cush, as far as we can understand during this timing period, they are at war. War is absolutely rampant, and destruction, mutilation, bombs and guns, and you name it. The place is absolutely repleted with war and destruction. So then, there is a time and a place where then, when the Creator Yahweh Himself decides, then the situation changes. At this point in time, the place is at war. There is not much what we humans can do, because the situation is at war. Either you are part of the war, you have to bear guns and fight on either side with north and south, as this war then is raging for years. And quite frankly, no person from the faith can try to set up tabernacling at this point, because the place is at war. So then, from Daniel 11, then the structuring of Daniel 11, considering also the changes of those wordings in Hebrew and the significance of these words because of the Gentile level characteristic of these writings, shows then the new system. So Daniel 11, except when speaking of tabernacling, whereas you read the establishment of the vision and the intentions of then enforcing tabernacling and protecting tabernacling, the rest of it is related with the system and the sons of Ishmael and oil and trade and freighters. Speaks of a system, computerized system, high knowledge. Speaks of taxes, investments. Now the unique situation of Hebrew is this. The Hebrew language is then translated, and also the understanding is based from the 5 human senses. You know, taste, vision, listening, touching, and so on and so forth. However, in our languages, we are not straightforward based from the 5 senses. So then the obscurity of these Hebrew words and Hebrew chapters from an understanding of the 5 senses, and then, since the early Hebrew, they could not be obscured, yet they used their own language because they could not explain obscured situations. So then, Yirmiyahu, Daniel, Ezekiel, they had to use a combination of words where then content and context. That's the distinction. If you have then a situation related with the content, five senses translate to content, five senses. The context of it is imbued, or then it is in the context or content itself. However, when you transfer these from the five senses into other language, then you have the obscurity. Then you have to understand then the context of the whole situation, so then you understand these areas of investments and taxes and systems and knowledges and virtual monetary systems, and then the freighters and data. These are entirely explained partially in Daniel, and most of it explained in Yirmiyahu the prophet. So then, when we read from the land of Cush, there is a point then where Egypt is a great country, was a great kingdom, yet these sons of Ishmael, or then the Islamic State, they must gather as per the instructions in Egypt. They are gathering over there, but they have a very potent card to play. And this very potent card is oil. So then, the wisdom of the Arabs is they know as far as what China is doing. China leads 57% of the world's market. So it's more than 50%. They understand that the system of China encourages online transactions. So then they provide the inexpensive oil for them so they can expand this system further worldwide and secure the future via this system. So then nations, as they come out of poverty, then they invest in their own infrastructuring system, and they provide internet signals, and then not only they make purchases and they receive and they send and they receive money and send money, but then the third icon of investment is then extremely important. There are virtual monetary systems yet, they must be regulated, and a lot of them are not linked with central banks. So then the existing understanding of banking that we used to have no longer is active when we understand these new virtual systems linked with the rights of your own computer. Because as you exercise your rights of purchasing and buying and investment in your computer with a virtual monetary system not linked with the central bank, you yourself as the user become a central bank. You make your own decisions. And you do not have to report taxes or any kind of obligations because the law yet is not enforcing. Obviously, you should use your best judgment and your prudence in what kind of items you are going to buy, obviously. But what you do with this money is absolutely 100% up to your discretion. But you are not obligated to pay not even a cent to the government because there are no laws establishing it. These should give you great savings because yet you can buy what you want and you do not pay taxes for it. So then, Daniel explains these systems. Yirmiyahu explains these systems. Now we are speaking of a normal situation. So then, The point in time that we are speaking of relies with governments understanding these holy instructions, so then they can make the proper adjustments and line up themselves because of the consequences of these very legal facts. We are not talking about an intervention of the government because a scoundrel is doing what should not be doing. I'm only saying for the government start acting because people are doing what is legal. Can you understand the distinction from doing what's right and what's wrong? Yirmiyahu the prophet. Lots of details as far as the restoration period was given, and then as Yirmiyahu via content and context can be dismembered and then compared with Daniel, Ezekiel, and then Zechariah, we can understand even more details, not only of the time of the restoration period, Gentile level, but also tabernacling. And then there is an absolutely new layer coming related with the spiritual condition of this period of time. This means the religious layers of each person and how are going to then relate this religion with what they are doing online. And the spiritual understandings of these simultaneously. Thus then we understand Revelation. It takes a bit of time if a person is not used to at least to read the holy instructions. It takes some time, let's say every day for 5 minutes. You glanced at it, you give a bit of time, always factual. You understand the facts of a layer and then you compare with the other layer and you read both prophets in 5 minutes. If you want, you can do more. But if you do this every day, then it becomes much easier. And you yourself may be able to find a very important layer linking up with the other prophets, as long as the prophets and the instructions and revelation and what the Shilishim or the apostles taught, based from the importance of tabernacling, if these are then linked, then great chances you can obviously speak of. So please stay tuned, much more coming up.